look nice though.
They do. Oh yeah, and I was saying. I'm glad we found that. Gabe, I guess what I'm trying to say is the irony is that you would think many people would, because it's a more significant when you graduate from college, okay? Would purchase a classroom. That's true. In the U.S., it's culturally a minority. Even the numbers don't show that. But it is. People don't go. So guys, get out your notes. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, the irony is that something that would be more of worth, people don't tend to get. Does that make sense? Like something of that worthwhile nature.
Did you hand out new notes on Monday?
We have the judicial notes. Oh, you know what? As I'm saying, get out notes. I think you guys. You know what? I don't think we did hand these out. No. So as I'm telling you to do it.
Hey, no, we got
No.
So good call. Let me hand. In fact, Gabe. So,
we should make a band.
Oh no, you're making me. Making me hear this out.
So make sure we large. Okay, yeah, I'd say the irony is that in terms of class rings, Jocelyn's makes their money off of the class rings.
And they make their money off the Super Bowl ring, bro.
Yes.
That's insane. That's actually so sick.
But the reality is, professionally speaking, you don't see a lot of people like toting around their high school ring.
No.
Does that make sense?
Except that one Justin dude who said.
Exactly, and I'm like, meaning he's trying to create a market that really isn't there. Yeah. I'm just trying to be honest with you guys. Ironically, for college, you would want to get something because that is more momentous. But people in college, like, I'm out, I'm done, like they're not going to. Yeah, like you guys get that irony, like you think I want to spend more there because that's more momentous, but because they're broke, they don't. High school is sort of a niche, almost made up market for the ring. Anyway, Gabe was asking that. I just want you guys to. Right. Yeah, people won't care as much. Maisie, right. But I just want you to be aware too, as a senior, like, oh, everybody gets them. And like, as a professional, nobody's toting around like, here's my high school ring. Like it's. Maybe for college, maybe for like a magna cum laude, ring, maybe. But ironically, when they should care, they don't. You're right. Yeah. 300. Okay, as the papers are being passed out, right? There's 2 copies, or 2 sheets, part 1 and part 2. Make sure you guys have that. I'm curious, anything fun, different, exciting happened over the weekend? Anything?
ACT was terrible.
I'm so mad. Spencer, I like that. So like ACT was.
Well, I mean, it's a dumb 4-hour test.
Correct.
That like it's different every time. And it's the process. Yeah, the process to get into the place, and we were socially distanced, but couldn't take our masks off, or else we got kicked out. Our test was boring.
So everybody get part 1, part 2.
When are we going to talk about the freaking case?
Well, we talked about it on Friday. Beyond that, maybe, but I want to get some more of these notes.
I know it is. Come on, I want to get people to walk out. Here's the hold off my admission ticket, and it says on October 10th.
Let's get through some of these first.
I go there to just make sure that we don't be on the list.
So,
was the testing back?
Okay, all right, guys, take a seat. Let's get going. Spencer, what you were saying, and Maddie, those who took it, I hope the results turn out well. I understand that the time sink that it can be, and the strength of the ACT has grown leaps and bounds since.
Are they not counting it?
Well, correct. Tell yes. For this year, USU and a number of universities are going to omit them, or you don't need to. Yes.
This year, like,
Scholarships.
But for scholarships, and also if anybody does like a gap year, who knows what happens, Talia, in like 2 years or whatever. But you're right.
Earth doesn't exist.
And this is what I was trying to comment on, is the strength of the ACT versus the SAT. SAT used to be like the thing, period. ACT has grown a lot in strength, and I guess I've been surprised, but I sort of understand the reasoning. It has grown a ton in strength.
Why is it so big?
Great inflation. Kids get A's like candy at Halloween nowadays.
And which one?
Our
ACTs?
school, yeah. But
So,
ACT is low-key.
I hear you. Yeah, it's like, why choose that sucker instead of other things? Yeah.
Yeah, but
great.
it's not like it's just our school either. So
Well,
like,
yeah, it's not just the U.S. in general has great inflation, but Gabe, that's why ACT and SAT have been more there. Spencer, those who took it, do you feel it went well aside from the time sink?
It was, yeah, but it was weird just because like, some of the questions were just weird, but I felt like it went well.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's time management is the biggest thing
Time
with ACT.
is so dumb.
Oh, biggest thing on that. Well, good. Maisie?
A lot of colleges aren't taking ACT scores because people didn't get time to retake it, so people are applying to colleges and they're losing money.
Yeah. This year
Private
they...
institution.
Very true.
Most people apply to like all of their colleges by now because they've got everything lined up to graduate.
For your graduating year, it's interesting. Last year, ironically, you'd think that enrollment would be like this year for the fall. Most universities are doing okay this fall, but you're right. For next fall, because of the weird admission stuff.
In 2 years, who knows? Killer Cornick might kill us all.
That's the spirit. Maisie, that's a fair point. Tyler did get your class couple points. He has done, for anybody on the plaintiff side, I gave him a tip. It is an individual activity, but to help streamline your performance on the third, I think we tossed some ideas back and forth to see what arguments you guys are using. If you really wanted to try to go against the defense in a unified fashion, that's an idea. Tyler got some points. He did some pretty thorough research on the topic so far, so just be aware of that.
I'm doing.
Okay, now on to the notes. To understand the context of this, yes, we'll do the Supreme Court hearing and we'll do all that. And you guys sort of know plaintiff and defense and judges, but understand sort of how that specific thing got all the way from a lower court to the top. To quote the great philosopher Drake, you started on the bottom. Okay, so we just got to make sure. Great, isn't he a political scientist that we can quote? Basically. But the legal system. The legal system is. Does that make sense? You got to go from the bottom up and see how it goes. So let's see what that is under the section of judicial review. Aside from the word sounding a little drunk, that term has two things we're going to write down in this section. Anybody want to take a stab at what judicial review is? You've probably heard it in A push, right? Like, anyone want to take a stab at it as to what judicial review is?
is it when they review the cases of other courts, like lower courts?
Okay, so yes. But they're looking something not just to say like if they overturn the verdict, right, or uphold the verdict, but they're also looking for something else. Yes, they review, but they're looking for something. The Supreme Court's the only one that has this power, mind you.
Picking
There
their
it is.
cases.
There. It's the constitutionality of it, right? So the first thing you're going to write down is, it is the unconstitutional power. It is the unconstitutional power of the Supreme Court. It is the unconstitutional power of the Supreme Court to change or strike down a law if they find it unconstitutional. Okay, it is the unconstitutional power of the Supreme Court to change or strike down a law if they find it unconstitutional. Keep going here, ladies and gentlemen. Based on what?
Can you
I'll start again. So it's the unconstitutional power of the Supreme Court to change or strike down a law if they find it unconstitutional. based on what? What's their metric of...
Their interpretation of the law.
That's exactly it. Based on their own interpretation of the Constitution. Yes, there should be some weird quizzical looks of, this sounds incestuous almost. I don't like this cyclical definition going on here. But yes, one more time from the top, tell you, it is the unconstitutional power of the Supreme Court to change or strike down a law if they find it unconstitutional, based on their own interpretation of the law. Now, please don't think, clean this up here for you, please don't think that I'm saying judges are all illegal and they're unconstitutional buttholes. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you were to look at Article 3, which Article 3 is about what? You guys can open up your own constitutions if you have. It's on the judicial branch. It is the shortest of those three, right? Article 1 is the longest. Article 2 is medium. It's like mama bear, or papa bear, mama bear, baby bear, right? The baby bear of the equivalent, or of the governmental structure, is judicial. It was intended to be probably the weakest of those three. But yes, Gabe, over time, I will submit to you, most political scientists will submit to you, that currently, Baby Bear took some steroids. He went to Russia for a couple years, got some off-the-market stuff, and now he's jacked. Okay? Meaning, in the U.S., the court system, the judicial branch, many political scientists, Garrett, will say, it's the strongest branch of the three. Obviously, they're all pretty comparable, right? Yeah. But whereas before it was like the legislature was supposed to be stronger, then the president gained some, it's like a horse race after Nixon. The court system really, since the Warren Court from the 60s, since then has been the most powerful branch of the three. Now let's break this down. Article 3 doesn't mention anything. It mentions about you can serve with, what's that wording? You can serve. Got some fun text going around.
My mom. Sophie just found out why I'm the way I am, so it's just really funny.
It's hilarious.
Okay.
Not inappropriate.
I'm not going to unturn that rock and see what's there. I'm just going to let that rock.
Or stone.
Okay. Anywho. I'm going to leave that unturned. I'm not going to. Except for that. So guys, my question here for you is, with the courts being so powerful, and it's in Article 3 that they get to serve as long as they have what?
Good behavior.
Good behavior. And as Spencer's looking at it, it's rather short. So what is not found in there is the power of judicial review. Some would say the biggest power of the courts right now is judicial review. The irony is that it's nowhere found in the Constitution. And then the double irony is that it's, wait a second.
Well, how are they supposed to review thousands and thousands of cases every year?
And so this is the divergent thing. The U.S.'s strongest branch right now is the Supreme Court. Hence, Amy Coney Barrett's like the intense scrutiny that those Supreme Court nominees are put under, because once they're on the court, they can serve as long as they have good behavior. You can impeach them, but we don't have a tradition of impeaching them because the standards are so high or low, or however you want to say it. And in the third article of the Constitution, it doesn't give us any parameters on what they do. Their only responsibility, you guys know this from the first section, judicial powers in government is expected to do what again? Forget the U.S. and what we think of now. When they review thousands of cases, as Tyler's saying, what is their responsibility to do there?
To interpret the law.
Oh, that's U.S. We are so ingrained, Heather, of like the U.S. courts interpret the law. We are so ingrained in it. We are the only court system. We are the only court system in the modern developed world that has such a strong judicial branch. No country even comes close to the strength of our judicial branch. Not England, not the irony of it, not even China. Now, they might have a 99% conviction rate, but in terms of the highest court of the land really reviewing and interpreting things, nobody has that power. Nobody. It's not even close. The irony is we took our system from England, but yet we've grown more powerful. So my question again is, yes, they get to serve for good behavior. But what is the term, what are judges supposed to be doing outside of the U.S.? When they review thousands of cases, what are they supposed to be reviewing? That's it, they're deciding punishment. So even if you have lower courts, right? So Trey is involved in a criminal case, and it's, in this case, I guess, U.S. versus Erickson. Right, that's your last name. And then you appeal it, you don't like the verdict, you appeal it up to the next level, and then you appeal it to the highest level, whatever it's called, in this case, the Supreme Court. In that case that you've appealed, the court in other countries would just look at it and say, okay, we are determining guilt or non-guilt. Do we look at the evidence, and did we actually see that he messed up? Was there a problem of procedure and not just fact? And we look at it. That's it. But in the U.S., they also they most importantly look at not just determining punishment, but what? Constitutionality of it. For 10 points. There was a court case. And in A push, I know you guys talked about this. There was a seminal court case that gave the power of judicial review to the judges. There's an important court case that gave the power. Justice Marshall, I'll give you a hint. This is the early 1800s. Justice Marshall had a super strong court. And he had the Federalists leaving power.
Oh, Marbury versus Madison.
There it is. There it is. 10 points, Tyler. There it is.
I listened.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes.
I think it should be 12.
I'm going to take a page out of Justice. I'm going to give you a point for each letter. But yes, Marbury versus Madison. I won't test you on that. But Justice Marshall, in a Putin-like move here, of bureaucratic, like the guy was impressively ninja-ing his way around this. The Constitution is clear, Spencer. The court should determine punishment, and that's it. For good behavior, they're the court of last appeal. That's it. President can nominate them, nothing more. Justice Marshall, about 2 decades after the ratification of the Constitution, said, yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that. So what he did was a very interesting thing. Does anybody know any of the facts of the Marbury versus Madison case? The name itself is, I'll give you another hint. Madison, not Stefan Marbury. No, that does relate to China, though I don't know how that helps us out. But in Madison, yes, he was at the time one of the cabinet members for lovely Jefferson, and we talked about it that Adams was president, and then he leaves and Jefferson takes over. And so they had all these Federalist court appointees. Does this sound at all familiar? And these were midnight appointments. They made all these appointments at the last minute, and Adams said, ha-ha, deal with that, you punk Jefferson, you son of an Indian, whatever. And then the Federalists left. And at the time they had Jefferson come in, and he's like, I'm not going to fulfill all these appointments for courts. No way, this is dumb. Those guys did not get paid. And so a guy named Marbury, who was trying to get paid, he went and sued Madison, who's in the cabinet, saying, give me my money. And Madison's like, no, I'm a buddy of Jefferson over there, we're not giving you nothing. And they sued, and they went all the way to the Supreme Court. And Justice Marshall, on one hand, all the Federalists thought that, that's right, he's going to make sure our Federalist judges get paid and that they'll get in place. Attaboy, Marshall. And Marshall's like, no, I'm actually not going to make sure they get paid. In fact, I don't think we can even hear this case. And the Federalists are like, to Justice Marshall, how dare. Turns out that Justice Marshall spun it on him. He said, look, I don't believe we have the power to do this because the Judiciary Act of 1789 says that you can change our original jurisdiction, but the Constitution says you can't change our original jurisdiction, and therefore, I am having the power of judicial review that I get to interpret the Constitution, and that is not in there, and from here on and henceforth, we, the judges of the Supreme Court, will have the power to interpret the Constitution. And Jefferson's like, thanks, question mark? Right? Because didn't he sort of back Jefferson up there in a way?
Point.
Yeah, I mean, like, right, and Marshall's like, you're welcome. And Jefferson's confused, and he's like, wait a second, so you didn't give the money to the Federalist judges, thank you, but now I'm worried. And now that you're going to take a whole bunch of power here, and it's the equivalent of like, let's hope we have prom this year, or senior ball, right? Senior ball is the one for seniors, correct? Okay.
Not for freshmen.
Not for freshmen. Make sure that.
Unless somebody asks for freshmen.
Unless somebody asks for freshmen.
Well, even
Oh.
I know. I was like, why'd you ask that question? But now I'm with you.
But okay. Let's imagine that Kennedy asks this freshman boy to senior ball. Okay.
She would.
I would. I really would.
Just to mess with him. So she asks, and she's asking permission from her mom. Like, hey mom, can I do this? You know, can I ask this boy
No, I'm
to
an adult.
senior ball?
I'm an adult.
We'll see that come November 3rd. We'll see the court case, right? We'll see what happens. But Kennedy, Kennedy said,
Snap. Fire.
right. But Kennedy,
Wait, what's the court
but
case?
Kennedy says, hey mom, can I do this? And you're like worried because your mom might be like, no, I can't do this. And on one hand, your mom's like, yeah, sure, you can go with that freshman boy. That's not a problem at all. And you're like, sweet. And then she's like, but by the way, and you know, I'll even give you money.
Legal.
I'll give you money, and I'll pay for the limo. Wait, and Utah people don't do limos, huh?
No.
But I'll pay for a limo. We'll be extra. You can invite that weird Sophie girl over. That's fine too. She can be part of the group as well.
Which freshman are you taking?
Are you grooming the kids?
Okay, that's getting too weird. Yeah, we're gonna avoid that one altogether. That's a little too much.
Hey, but if Kennedy.
No.
Let's think about this here.
I met him in high school. It's fine. I could ask him when I was 17. I had like a week to do that.
Okay, now we're getting weird. So she gets permission. Her mom says, "Yeah, I'll pay for the limo. I'll pay for all these. You can even have like a hot air balloon thing. It'll be great. We'll pay for all of this. It's amazing."
Yeah.
And then she says at the last minute,
We know a guy.
but I'll just have to supervise everything.
Okay.
And right then, wouldn't you be like, yeah, sure,
No. That's an honor.
forever at all times?
I mean, if you're going with the freshman, I guess it's okay. Yeah, I
Sure.
But if I'm going with the freshman, then nothing.
Yeah, I mean that. But by that one agreement, not only does your mother get to supervise that one date and date or whatever, but every future date ever, even when you're 23.
I wouldn't even let her do one day. That's disgusting.
Jefferson should have at that time said like, no, rat, I smell a rat. I don't like this at all. But Jefferson was like, yeah, okay. And nobody questioned Marshall. And Marshall's back there like diabolically. This is the thing.
He's like Mr. Burns.
It really is, because he consolidates power. And Talia, I wish Jefferson had more of your mentality. Be like, nope, I don't. I'm not even going to get this one win to win the battle when I'll lose the eventual war, which means that the courts will get more power. Justice Marshall was able to obtain huge power, and as they looked at it, that's why I mean it's an unconstitutional power. Is judicial review found in Article 3?
Nope.
No, it's not found in any
Why
amendment.
can't they just say, oh, so it's not in the Constitution? That
Because it's
It
already
could be a
built
cycle.
in us.
Say it one more time.
It's already built in us.
Exactly. I love the way you said it. It's built in us. Remember that analogy of the sand in your hand, right? Justice Marshall's like, we're going to get a big scoop of sand here, and we will be very gradual with how much we squeeze and how much we control. But we'll get this big scoop that is judicial review. We are all expecting that, oh, the guys in court robes and speaking Latin and biblical pillars, yes, religious, judges, getting confused over the two. We assume that their expectation is to interpret the law. And Talia, you're right, we expect that to happen, even though other systems are like, no, you 9 people are going to interpret the law, and that's it? That doesn't add up, but we're expecting it. We expect it, and we find pride in it, do I not? When I say, like, what is the role of the judges? To interpret the law. Should we take pride in that only 9 people who are... Do you guys get what I'm saying there, that we expect it? I like, Talia, how you said that.
that's why we need a revolution.
Who else would interpret it if it wasn't just the non-judges?
Washington believed somebody else should. He was looking at the Constitution, he's like, well, I can see the need for a check, right? Where like you look at a law that's passed that might be unconstitutional. Nothing in there is stated as to who should check. I mean, there's checks and balances, but Washington's like, I need something here for a couple points. Who did Washington think should be the power of review?
Probably the president.
Under what constitutional power? We wrote this thing.
It's head of state.
What's his check?
Veto.
Veto. It's the checks and balances, Sammy. So Washington believed that it's the veto where he would strike down laws, not because he wanted it or didn't want it or is too controversial. He said, I'm writing a little opinion here that I find this law unconstitutional as I read the Constitution. And if you don't like my interpretation of it, what can you as citizens do? Vote him out. Vote him out. The court system. Wait a second, that interpretation is really funky. I don't know if people agree with that. What can you do?
Absolutely nothing.
Unless you do Sunnyside,
Yes.
Geronticide.
Yes. Hello, John Grisham. Yeah, Pelican Brief. Yeah, you can, right? You can take matters in your own hands, I guess. But legally, I should say, there isn't. Did I see another hand up? No. Okay, so extra constitutional power. That means they get to strike down a law or change it if they find it unconstitutional, based on their own interpretation of the Constitution. So Trey, you're right. There's two ironies there. Like, wait, ironically, it's not in the Constitution, and you're also using it to interpret the Constitution. Talia?
Would one reason it's almost better to have less people is because I think everyone in their own way has their opinion on how the Constitution should be interpreted, so if you add more, it's chaos.
So she wants an oligarchy.
Like,
Well,
I'm not saying
well,
that it's
or
not,
Gates
but
government.
less is more.
We're always
Let me be clear. Yeah. There are pros and cons of having few people doing this. One of the pros is you can try to be an apolitical institution, right? You might be nominated by a Republican president or Democratic president, but they're trying to be, I'm going to get my own bias out of it. Trying. That's the intent. And it does do a good job because is the majority of people wrong sometimes?
No.
Yes.
Sometimes. Most of the time, probably not. But sometimes, yeah, Brendan, we really mess up.
That's what
And the
people are
courts
saying
with
about it.
few of them can try to check the people from that.
It's kind of
So,
like
yeah, like it's not this Illuminati. I'm not saying that the Supreme Court's turned into Illuminati. There are some pros to it of having few people in charge. And if you were to pack the court more, then it might be too chaotic and weird. It's built into us. I don't know if there's any way to like peel back that thing. I think we're used to having few people in charge of the court system. We interpret the laws for better or worse.
Okay,
I do.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, so Roe versus Wade. A lot
Yes.
of people are predicting
Yes.
that with the
Yep.
new Supreme Court justice,
Yep.
it could be overruled.
And you guys know the numbers. Remember we talked about this.
Yep.
That shifts, that swing vote's gone, and now swing vote's gone. It's 6-3.
Right.
Even if Justice Roberts go crazy, it's 5-4.
That's
Right.
right.
That's because supermajority. 63.
Right. I mean 6-3. They have that with her getting confirmed. It's a supermajority. But even
Right.
if Justice Roberts is like, I don't want to change it. I'm going to go here instead. It's still a 5-4. They're out. My prediction is yes, when she is confirmed, and they're debating confirmation today. When she's confirmed, the next hours, day, whatever. That means in your lifetime. In my lifetime, that sounds really bad, like I say your lifetime, die tomorrow. In our lifetimes, I would predict that Roe versus Wade would be changed. The precedent will be tweaked where maybe first trimester abortions are still allowed, but under more regimented restrictions.
And like depending on like why, is it because
Right.
like they
Yeah.
or just don't want because they're responsible?
They
for
would. They might not overturn Roe v. Wade, but there's another case called Planned Parenthood v. Casey where they said
Right.
that states can't do what's called an undue burden. Arizona got in trouble with this by forcing expectant mothers to look at the ultrasound before they actually had the abortion, right? Like they said that's undue
trying to
burden.
humanize the
Yes, other states have said we want to have it where you have to bury the fetus and have a funeral for it. And the courts have said, based on Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey,
Right.
no, that's too much of an undue burden. That first trimester right is still there. But I would predict that Planned Parenthood v. Casey will be overturned, and Roe v. Wade is like changed. I don't know if it'll be overturned completely, but like where
Because
you can get an abortion, but like it's under a lot more
And you gotta
regiment.
like, and you said with the vacation, like so you can make it so the states can actually like.
Correct.
You gotta look at the ultrasound to know
Correct.
what you're.
Correct.
What like.
Getting permission from a parental figure if you're under the age of 18. You know, things that are a little bit more like scrutinized, like
Wait,
that you could do
You
that.
can get an abortion without if you're under 18
Depending on
without
the
a guardian.
state. Depending on the state.
But doesn't, if this law were, let's say they make abortion just illegal.
If they like flat out, which I'm not
Yeah,
predicting that they got rid of Roe v. Wade.
Yeah,
If the
unless
court,
it was like rape,
Right.
incest, and help on the
fair
way.
enough, fair enough. Okay.
That would cause it to make unhealthy abortions.
Correct. We actually debated this about the black market of it, right? It's very real. Coat hangers, horrible things. I don't
It's
even
like
get
the
into it.
prohibition of alcohol. It
Right,
costs more.
right. But here's the thing is, that's why my prediction, it's such a volatile thing, but I really believe that with a confirmation in our lifetimes, we will see Roe versus Wade altered. Maybe not just for rape, incest, but like you can have more freedom in the first trimester. But that could mean second and third trimester abortions are done more nefarious ways. Like, yeah,
Which is worse because they're
that's a
less
potential
common.
So
consequence.
are abortions like,
But-
is it like a surgery, like a medical procedure, or like?
Both.
So then why? But you don't. In some states, you don't require a guard, like a parent permission, because I know, like in some, like in hospitals,
Because
you
of
have
rights
to
to privacy, there's certain things.
But you're a minor. You don't
Well,
have that.
and that's where the right to privacy is something we'll get into that's harder because it's not there. And it's not in the Constitution, but the judges have the power to interpret laws and things into it. So then let's segue here to the second thing. The biggest disadvantage of judicial review is, right, so I want you to write this down, the biggest disadvantage of judicial review is, the biggest disadvantage of judicial review is, we already talked about the positive here, Sophie, of like, it checks the other branches, right? Maybe the president wouldn't be as knowledgeable on scholarly constitutional issues, so we'd rather have judges who've gone through, law school and legal
teacher.
precedents, and as a lawyer going through court systems. We want that to happen. We like that check and balance because the majority can be dumb at certain times. Can you guys think of some examples of the majority sort of dumb at certain times?
the Salem witch trials.
I'm thinking more of
Salem witch
yes, yes. Thank you, Crucible. But I'm thinking since 1791.
Trump's Twitter feed.
Where the majority, okay, again, it's more singular. People might like it, but I'm talking more of when the general consensus is like this is it, but it's actually wrong.
Slavery.
Yeah, no, obviously that wasn't the whole country, but in certain areas and states,
It's majority.
the majority of those states, it's like you done messed up. I know you had a tradition, but that isn't good. Hunter, were you going to say something?
I was gonna say Nazi Germany.
Okay, so in that angle there, if they had another branch that would check and balance and say, actually, I understand you want to do this and Sieg Heil and all that stuff, but remember, we do have certain basic rights that need to be checked.
Oh, like the Cultural Revolution
So in China, you mean? Yeah.
with the little red book.
Yes. That's not the little
And
red
the
book that I have.
Oh, and the pioneers.
Yes. So those ideas.
Because if your parent like grounds, you just called them to the Gestapo.
So Hunt, you guys are right on that. There are times, doesn't happen all the time. I would say it happens less frequently than the alternative. The majority makes mistakes. The court system, that's the biggest advantage of it. The biggest disadvantage of it, guys, for 5 points, can anybody connect some dots here? So too much power.
Can be abused.
It can be abused. I think these are disadvantages. Too much power.
Like
Sophie?
9 people are deciding how the law applies to the whole country.
Right, so too much power can be abused. 9 people are making the decision for the whole country.
Based on their beliefs.
Yeah, exactly. Again, Talia, like this. They're interpreting the Constitution not based on we have this diagram drawn up by Hamilton himself that we look at, or Madison secondary. At least there's some standard there. This is whatever.
Well,
I don't feel like
the
it.
legislative and
That's it. These are all big disadvantages, guys. Trey, very good. Write this down. The biggest disadvantage of judicial review is that it makes Congress lazy. It makes Congress lazy.
So that's why they're not complaining.
Why don't we take one out?
One of the judges?
No, why don't we just take Congress out?
One of the branches, you mean?
Yeah, well, and just
some
give it to
issues with that.
The lobbyists won't have that.
But I really like, Talia, I think you're hitting on something. Today especially, we look at our government. And we sort of get the president, whether we actually do or not. We think we do. We understand what they do, though we probably overestimate what they can do. The judges, we sort of get too. Congress, there's 535 of them. It's hard to keep track of. So a lot of people don't think they're important when, ironically, Hamilton's rolling in the grave and being like, Zombies. No, he's saying instead. Thank you, Lucas, for the token laugh. He's saying instead, like, no, the Congress is the most powerful, but we don't think they are. My suggestion would echo zombie Hamilton's, and that is, if there's a way that we can help Congress out because they do represent the people more, that's probably better. Even though the sentiment is, just get rid of them. They sort of seem like a joke anyway.
We need 500 people to rule.
Well, I'm saying not get rid of them, but we could for sure eliminate some.
To make it, you're right again.
Or to put more power on them somehow with less people, more power.
Yeah. The natural sentiment right now in today's world, yes, will be let's understand it. Let's make it fewer. We can hold them accountable.
Just get them graded.
You could.
Have a B
in today's world, that makes sense because it makes it easier. I think the founders would say, let's not make the test easier for you. You get that sentiment, like, I know it's harder to keep track of 135, and it seems like a joke, but we don't want to make the test easier. Let's still try to give them power because they represent you. That'd be their answer. But you're not wrong. A lot of people do agree with that. Like the Electoral College. It's complicated. Keep it simple, right? Same idea. So guys, what does it mean? Trey, you're getting onto it. Why does it make Congress lazy? Why does judicial review make they're totally separate, right?
Because it overrules their power and it takes over what they have basically.
Yeah.
So they don't get that power, so they don't care.
There it is. That final, they don't care. So it's an abuse of power. There's 9 people making decisions. Anybody here? Charlie's deep in thought on this, I know, as he's looking up particular allergies. Anybody here like allergic? Ellie, we hear you. I know Ellie's got certain allergies.
She has all of them.
Yeah, Ellie's not certain.
Give some points.
She has allergies.
And she's got the best attitude about it. She's
I know.
like, she really does. Aside from Ellie, anybody here have like allergy to penicillin? I'm trying to think of things. Tyler, your sister. Okay, so Tyler, your sister. I'm deathly allergic to penicillin myself. So let's say that Tyler, you were to have a pretty bad case of like strep throat. Okay, you had an infection and it was running rampant through your body, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor would prescribe you what?
Penicillin.
A lot of people, they prescribe penicillin, right? And at that time, the penicillin script is written by whom again?
The doctor.
Okay, and then given to Tyler, and Tyler will then take it to whom?
The pharmacist.
The pharmacist. Okay, this will make sense in a second. And the pharmacist looks at it and he's like, okay, I'm seeing his medical history. What should the pharmacist do? Not give it to him. Says, I'm going to check the doctor and save your life, and I'll give you amoxicillin instead, and same dosage, and here we go. And gives it to him. Was that good? Probably. I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, so people aren't dead, and that's a good thing. Kennedy, however, if the pharmacist keeps checking the doctor's scripts time and time and time again, well, what?
It's chaotic.
It's chaotic. The doctor's not, Heather?
Like the doctor will just like
Be annoyed.
stop writing legit prescriptions because the pharmacist is going to give them what they actually need anyway.
Hence the doctor's poor handwriting. No. But Heather, you're right on. I love the connection is the doctor in this case is just going to be like, well, look, I know your pharmacist is just going to give you whatever. So I'm just going to write a smiley face, have a nice day, here you go. Right? If the pharmacist acts too uppity, if you will, and checks too much, the doctor's going to get lazy and just say, whatever, I don't know, and make him better. Smiley face, hope Cindy's doing well. And, it makes it chaotic. Yes, Talia, for 5 points. This is similar to what relationship, ladies and gentlemen?
Congress and the judicial.
Congress and the judicial branch. Now, okay, who's Congress in this analogy?
The Congress is the doctor.
Doctor, yes. Who is the pharmacist?
The judicial branch.
Yes, very good.
I keep running back.
And the drug dealership, isn't it? It's just outside.
Okay, yeah.
I can also give you.
I can see that analogy where it's like you're trying to get certain. I'm not going to go down the painkiller road. That's a bad analogy. But
to certain pills.
I'm just imagining Tyler's like, I need my amoxicillin, and the doctor's like, you've already had enough.
Wait, how'd you know?
And the pharmacist's like, you already had enough, and the drug dealer's like, I'm President Trump. I got some. Meaning an executive order could circumvent them for a time to get it. Yes.
Wait, did you just say Trump's a drug dealer?
No, no.
Any
No, the president is.
any president can circumvent it and say, executive order, I'm going to make this call. Which again, if your pharmacist and doctor are being bad and you need legitimate medicine, that's one of the advantages of having a president do something, right? Is they can step in and help out. But the drug dealer thing sort of works. We'll call it Canadian pharmacy. You can just go up there across the border and get
Canadian.
stuff. But regardless, the analogy hopefully makes sense. Who in that, let me tell you here, who has more prestige? A doctor or a pharmacist? You tell me.
Doctor.
I mean, it can depend, right? You could have like your local pharmacist who knows everybody, is super friendly. But Maddie, I think generally speaking, the doctor in the U.S. culture has like more renown, more prestige.
It's like nobody's gonna sit there and be like, I need a pharmacist.
Right.
Like there's a bunch of TV shows
Yes.
about doctors, but there's no TV
Right,
shows about
right,
pharmacists.
right.
Hello, what do you think CSI Miami is?
Guys, legally speaking, in our world today, Sammy, the pharmacist is much more popular. Does that make sense? Because they're the ones who check and override prescriptions left and right. So Heather and Talia, the ideal you're saying, like, it'd make it chaotic, it'd make them do whatever. Legally, that's why we're doing what we have. In fact, that's why our own, we talked about the IRS tax code is more than 16,000 pages long. And there's tons of
Who typed all
redundancies.
that? Did they
There's
use
tons of
this special, like,
redundancies,
you know, the
and
IRS
misspellings and typos
like-
and problems and page. The reason why is ultimately, if there's a
Or have you
mistake
seen the
in the
ones where you just,
law,
like, press
who will fix
and
it?
makes words? They're so weird.
I'll say it again. Ultimately, if there's a mistake in the law, omissions, they forget this, they contradict themselves. If there's omissions in the law, who will ultimately fix it?
Judicial
The
branch.
judicial branch. So it's a good thing, but also the bad thing. It makes them lazy. Yeah, Gabe?
So I just found out that the IRS has a contingency plan that, like, if the U.S. is destroyed, like from some apocalyptic event, they have a plan that the surviving members of the IRS will set up and execute the plan so that they can still tax us. So even if we survive the apocalypse, we still get taxed.
We need them roads, though. We need them roads. Okay? Don't doubt it. I'm not surprised.
No doubt, no doubt.
I'm because it's been with bureaucracy. You got to keep doing. I'm
I'm
not
like,
surprised.
come on, we
Sammy,
can survive
Sammy?
the nuclear holocaust. What a good show.
Well,
Is that a possibility?
it is not just a possibility. Now, lazy is an oversimplification. It has made them less articulate, exact, and precise in their lawmaking. On average, bills are extraordinarily longer, have more typos, inconsistencies, contradictions within them, are not carefully passed through committees since 1960.
they're
Since
no longer
the
the
advent
right
of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, the laws are poorly grammatically and constitutionally written because they know that the in-betweener things. Now, they might not consciously know that, but that's where we believe the correlation. There's a definite correlation.
So they became from wise village
Causation, we
elders
can make that
to
claim.
elders with dementia.
Does that make sense? Yeah. The bloat that's found in it. Pork barrel hasn't helped out. Yeah.
So does that laziness lead to even more power to the judicial branch since they can interpret it how they want, or
Yeah.
since it's more
Yeah.
loose?
There's discretionary power, right? Where it's like we meant this, Your Honors, and no, we're just going to go this way, right? It is. It's a slippery slope. There's good to it. But man, personally, I love that Washington idea of just like, I'm going to take this, I'm going to check it, and we're going to go from there. If you don't like my constitutional scholarly, and this is the other thing too, if we were to keep going with that model, that would actually mean like our president would actually have to be like abiding by the Constitution. Do you guys get what I'm saying there? Because like they'd have to be up to snuff on their own reasonings and rationale.
You have a little red book?
This is our Constitution. Thank you very much, Lucas.
He has a
So
little
what
black
if they
book.
interpret it and it's like a directly against the law? Like it's clear to see to everyone, but they say, oh no, that's my interpretation.
The analogy of the sand is they will hold that sand, but they won't grip it too tightly. So they will never go, as tradition, since the Warren Court, so against the norm that they will rouse suspicion.
They don't want to lose the power.
They don't want to lose the power. So the question is, what if they were to do it? If they were to wholesale overturn Roe v. Wade, that's why I'd be like, that's a tight grip on that sand. I don't know if it's going to be completely overturned. Because then people what would they do? They would petition the court to get packed. They'd petition Congress to impeach right? And they don't want that either. Does that make sense? Okay, under what's a lawsuit? There will be, let's see. There's going to be a lot we will write down here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, there's 8 total things we have down here.
What's a lawsuit?
So under what's a lawsuit? There's 2 things there's 2 types of cases. So we'll talk about the types first. What are the types of cases? Gabe.
Are you talking? I guess. Are you talking more about like criminal versus civil?
There it is. There it
or
is.
About
Yep.
like
Yep.
arbitration.
Well, arbitration won't be a case.
Oh no, it's a lawsuit. You can solve it via.
It's not technically a lawsuit. It would be mediation or arbitration. It could be privately handled by a judge or an arbiter, but not necessarily. It's not considered a lawsuit.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. But very similar. I like that. Okay. So the first thing I write down here is civil. Okay, Gabe, you're right on. We're talking about civil and criminal here. So we got civil. Okay, think of some examples, a civil lawsuit, a civil case.
Divorce.
Divorce, yeah. Okay, so you're thinking about divorce, you said Morris v. Frederick, yep, that's a civil case. That's a civil case. Okay, we got some examples. What is it? What is a civil case?
When it's like.
Two citizens.
Yes, it's between 2 citizens. So let's keep writing here that.
Not necessarily citizens, because you can also sue against the government too.
Correct.
Corporations.
You can say parties. We can say parties here. So it's a case involving a break in contract. It's a
Among
case.
2 parties.
You got it. A case involving a break in contract. We'll say between here, because you do need to separate it into 2 parties. A case involving a break in contract between 2 parties. Between 2 parties. Now, to be completely honest, man, I love this unit. There's part of me that wishes I could like blow this whole like national judiciary. Because honestly, of all the sections we've covered, this is the one I have the most experience with. Okay, so the national judiciary section, I wish I could blow it up as like a whole trimester course. You know, like
I'd take it.
you know, it'd be, but it wouldn't. It's just
I think it's
merely elected.
Wait, I gotta
feel that.
So I'm trying not to, Kennedy, not get into the nuances where people get lost, but I think it's interesting to know the power that you guys have to actually sue. All right, so in this case, a lawsuit.
Wait, if you're like 16, can you sue somebody?
No, you're a minor.
Traditionally, no.
Can I
There
sue
are
someone?
exceptions when you're trying to get for emancipation and stuff like that. Like there are exceptions, but
Can I sue
traditionally
your
no.
parents?
To emancipate from your
You
parents.
don't treat me right. I'm
Yeah, you can
suing-
emancipate
No,
yourself.
that's,
I mean,
that's
like, you can free
emancipation.
yourself.
No,
Right,
I wanna be
right.
emancipated.
Right. But if there were claims,
Okay.
so Kenny, long story short, if there were claims that your parents were actually truly abusing you, then the party involved here would be DCFS, Department of Child and Family Services, that would get involved, and the state of Utah or the federal government would come and, in a sense, represent you versus your parents.
So not like a single child. can
Correct.
sue.
Correct. Traditionally not. Traditionally
You
not.
have to be like over 18.
Yes, to be an adult for a civil lawsuit. Civil lawsuit. So civil is the breaking contract between 2 parties. So let me give an example here. Let's imagine that Garrett is a premier painter, a painter extraordinaire. And all the examples I give you here are from cases I've had to deal with. Because my specialty was property law. So I love constitutional law, but what I did for bread and butter was property law. Okay? So let's imagine that Garrett, you're a premier painter in Spokane, Washington, and you, good sir, have multiple contracts with multiple apartments and owners of those, to where you need to go and paint not just the fencing line, but all the buildings and stuff, right? Like you have a yearly contract to do so. And let's say that good old Hunter there is owning one of the premier establishments for apartments all in the north end of Spokane, Washington. And you, good sir, had a contract with Garrett. You have the contract, you have to paint these things by the end of next month, Garrett, because you have a new leasing option that Hunter's trying to then advertise and get money from. But Garrett, you go on a bender in Tijuana for a month and a half. You were not found anywhere, Garrett. You rapscallion you. You were on a drunken tirade, and you come back after a month and a half, but Hunter is, pardon my language, ticked off. Okay? All right. And so what happens is he then
Such
gets
bad
upset.
language.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Whoa. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
But Hunter, you're upset because that leasing window has passed, and you potentially have lost individuals from actually renting and signing on as leasees. With that said, you have this big apartment complex. You sue him, Garrett, the painter extraordinaire, for $80,000. Now the contract said that you had to do this. It didn't say what punishment or what price, but you sue him for $80,000. How can he claim that that's justified, suing him for
Because of
$80,000?
the rent that he lost.
Exactly. Guys, lawyers get really creative with saying the rent that he lost. He then added on another $50,000
For damages.
for punitive damages,
And mental damage.
meaning mental damages. And you might say, oh, come on. But let's be honest here. If you were for 3 weeks,
I'd be pissed.
staring day in and day out, losing sleep, your health is going down in the tank, you are worried sick over having lost revenue. You don't know what's going on, and you're seeing your competitors get signed leases, and they're making money.
Why didn't he just say, I'm listening to someone else?
Because he was hoping that any day he'd come back. Any day.
No, because
And
it
people
really
are.
affects
Contract.
me
And you can make that
because
argument.
they're money.
Because then if he were to hire
Yeah,
another
that's true.
contractor and Garrett were to come back, then Garrett
Right.
could sue him for loss of
It gives
income.
you grounds. Now there was an opt-out clause in it for that type of thing, but still, you would want to avoid litigation. Come on, come back. But Garrett was drunk in Tijuana. How dare you?
Yeah.
And he's gone. This type of case is then what's called what type of case? Civil between two parties. So in parentheses, I want you guys to put down when someone sues someone else, right? When someone sues someone else. This is a civil lawsuit. Judge Judy is a civil lawsuit, right? It is the. She is a prescribed judge, and her rulings are held.
But there's no jury.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought it up. Juries are not used in most trials. Even though we expect that, right? They're not using it. Especially on lower or plenary court trials, in this case civil lawsuits, the judge is going to be there. Guys, sue somebody in your lifetime, it's fun, okay? Do it. Really, honestly, I guarantee you, in your college age, Paige, you're going to be like renting an apartment and your heater goes out and your landlord, the most common thing is landlord and tenant violations. You're, for 3 weeks straight, complaining to the landlord and they're like, I'll get to it. They don't. You guys have been now for 2 months without actual heat in your apartment. Sue the landlord in small claims court for $600. In fact, I think Hunter, I was telling you a little bit of, Jesus.
No, I thought it was up to $5,000 for small claims.
Oh, it is. It's up to $5,000, depending on the state, for small claims court. Do it because you don't need to have a lawyer. You can go and hold them accountable, and you get a chance to see law in action, right? They might not fine for you, and that's
But then
okay.
you're-
But even the threat of it will hold people who have power over you accountable. All right?
So what's the process of like?
Hey, Casey. Doing well. I do. Will do. Okay, bye. So, Lucas, good sir. You need to go down to the front office.
You're being
He's
sued.
appeared to put his mask on, so I'm guessing. Could have got COVID, yeah.
No, Lucas.
So,
Is that actually what it's for?
no, I don't know. I don't know about that. Anywho, the idea is Judge Judy, even without the jury, is considered a civil lawsuit.
So what?
And I think, suing in small claims court is an opportunity to see law in action.
What's the
Amazing.
process?
Okay, this is kind of random, but my dad works with this guy whose wife makes a living by zooming in on pools, swimming pools, and seeing if they have one of those like disabled person things, and if they don't, she sues them. That is so.
Now,
oh my god.
okay, so Maisie, before we get to overly litigious actions, which that would be
Wait, what's the process for filing a lawsuit?
a small claims court, you go onto the local, it depends on the county, and you go on their website and you submit it, and it's up to the, you submit that usually through like the county sheriff's department, but you submit a claim, and then the opponent or defendant in this case is going to be served, and you serve them notice, and you've got a time in the small claims court It's Judge Judy, ladies and gentlemen. It's Judge Judy.
What's the best thing to sue
Spencer, we should do
someone for?
Guys, landlord-tenant stuff is the most common thing because it's legitimate. Like, you
And
guys
you
are
can
in a
win.
powerless position.
What about teachers?
Landlord-tenant.
No, because the teachers aren't protected.
So good, that's civil. Yeah, it's...
Unless they do like, you know, like get the ruler and like.
Yeah,
No, because even then you have to
after
school the
novel.
entire district.
Yeah, the question then is, will the district back you up on
So,
stuff or not?
I got a question. You went to Gonzaga, right?
Gonzaga.
Gonzaga.
It's not Gonzaga.
Makes me when people say that.
It's the dad, not this dog.
Exactly.
Okay. I have a Gonzaga shirt. If I wear it during the court, will you be more biased to our side?
I'm just the lowly stenographer.
But you're the teacher.
I've got no power.
You're basically like the mafia. You're the shadow ruler.
It's a good family right there.
The judges are the puppets.
I didn't know how you wanted me to turn these in. I tried to turn
if we don't like Gonzaga, we're out of the house.
Yeah, like to take a picture.
Will you give us a
I
point?
don't have my name on it.
Oh no, you got on the first one. That's okay.
Mr. Pierre, will
Hey,
you
thank
give
you
us
so
more
much.
points then?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. But not to sway
No,
one
just like
side or the other.
class.
Yes.
Yes.
One second. Time of induction snacks.
Right there. Like legit right outside the door.
Okay.
What up, Pierre? I won't miss you 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's not mine.
How was the catching up on what is it?
Just like actually do your stuff.
Lot 30. Yeah, I got cut up to go see better than
Michael.
I always wondered how they made this.
It's like a 3D printer thing. I think Doc, right? The drama guy.
Yeah.
He has